Solveiga invented a food waste concept whilst at Brunel University, wanting to make expiry dates inclusive to visually impaired people, before realising that expiry dates drive large amounts of food waste, as much as 1.3 billion tonnes globally each year. After winning the James Dyson Innovation Award for her food expiry label concept, she was propelled into starting her own company. With her background as an industrial designer, she was able to bring together creative problem solving with technical analysis. In 2017, she was also named MIT Technology Review's Inventor of the Year. We hear lessons and advice that we can learn from her founding her own food tech company.
Focus is my number one piece of advice. Actually making your decisions based on your values.
We learn about her story.
I felt like I was being strung along for a bit. I wasn't asking the right questions. I felt myself being pulled in a lot of different directions. Did you burn out? Are you okay? Are you leaving Mimica? What's happening?
And how they are disrupting the food industry.
And Mimica's bigger than me.
There you go. See, we're in sync now. Yeah, just tell us a little bit about Mimica, just an introduction, so that anyone listening knows a little bit about what you've created.
Absolutely. So Mimica, as a company, our mission is to radically reduce unnecessary food waste. And a lot of that food waste is caused by expiry dates, which, to protect consumers, they have to be set at the worst case scenario currently, because they don't know how you're going to store a pack of food versus how I would store one. So it's just safer for them to put the worst case scenario on everything. But that, of course, leads to a lot of unnecessary food being unnecessarily wasted. So what we do instead is that we've developed some packaging, like either a label, and we also have a cap that turns bumpy to the touch when the food or drink should actually no longer be consumed because it has spoiled based on how you've stored that particular pack. So the idea is that in most cases, you'd be able to use the product for longer than the guidance says so currently. Or if you accidentally leave it out, it's also going to warn you not to consume it because it's either going to be unsafe or it's past its best.
Yeah. So I guess you can say you're solving the problem that the sell-by date method is out of date.
Exactly.
Pardon the pun.
It will be soon.
Yeah. And really interesting and, of course, very impactful problem that you're trying to solve. Can you tell me just a little bit, of course, how this all started? I know it involved bananas.
Yes, you have heard correctly.
Yes.
So this all actually started as a university project that got out of control.
Yeah.
I studied industrial design at Brunel University in West London, and during a lot of us did a year in industry in between our second and final year, where we just went and worked for consultancies or in-house design teams. So I was working at a human factors design consultancy, and one of the projects that I got put on was for the Guide Dogs for the Blind Association. And it was all about public transport, so I got to travel on trains and buses with our lovely participants in the study, and people, I'd just ask them questions about their life. It was just interesting to me. So I asked them, how do you know how much milk to put in your tea? How do you get dressed in the morning without mixing and matching colours that don't work together? And for each of these questions, people had really good answers. So either they had some sort of hack that they used, or they had a device that helps them out. But when I asked people, how do you know when your food spoils? No one really had a good answer. So what it meant for them is either they got some help with their food, which meant that they weren't as independent as they'd like to be, or they were choosing longer life, more processed foods to avoid the issue of kind of fresher food spoiling. And they were quite generally a bit paranoid about that, the people I spoke to anyway. But eating such a large amount of processed foods has negative health consequences. So I when I digged in deeper, there was a high proportion of people with visual impairments that are overweight and live with diabetes. So I decided to, when I went back to my final year, that would be kind of my topic. So it all started with trying to help people with visual impairments. And then I very quickly realized that we're all kind of blind to when our food really spoils, which is why we are wasting so much. So where the banana comes into it is that I was thinking about what I could do on the packaging, and I was exploring maybe using a phone or that kind of, like I was just in the early stages of exploring. And I one day noticed a banana that had fully ripened. Its skin was changing. It was lumpy and bumpy and brown. And I just wondered, what if our plastic packaging could do that? And then I would know, like, it's past its best, I shouldn't consume it. So that was the first like vision of the entire package maybe doing something, crumpling up or doing something crazy like that. It was really blue sky thinking.
Yeah.
And then when I was exploring it further, you know, that wasn't obviously not going to be feasible. But what was useful is that I thought about scaling that down into a label and that having that same activity. So then I had a vision of a label that turns bumpy to the touch at the right time. So you never know when inspiration will strike.
Yeah. And so nature gave you the inspiration, you know.
Absolutely.
Really.
By mimicry.
Yes. Hence the name.
Yes, we mimic the food inside the pack, but yeah, I guess that there's a link there too.
Yeah. So tell me, when you were talking earlier about, you know, this the issue around vision impaired people, you know, trying to determine whether or not food is spoiled or not. Was this when you were at uni, or happened?
It was.
When did that happen? What year or what?
Yeah,
what point?
It was between my second and final year. I did a year in industry.
Yeah.
So it was while I got put on a Guide Dogs of the Blind Association project.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
it was kind of through that, and I just really enjoyed that project.
Yeah.
Really interesting.
So then tell me then how that then led into the whole James Dyson Award.
Yeah.
Tell me about that.
That was so unexpected and just really changed the trajectory of my life.
Yeah.
So we got to end of our final year. We were submitting our projects, and there was a push from the James Dyson Award encouraging people to submit our projects. And the brief for the award is design that solves a problem. That's it. It can be anything as long as it's a student project. And so I thought I had nothing to lose. The submission didn't take long, and everyone who submits gets put publicly on the website. So I thought, well, that's a good thing, and just left it at that. And I was 2 weeks into my first internship after uni, and I got a call telling me that I'd won the UK award.
Yeah.
And
wow.
They had a day of media interviews lined up for the next day. And
no way.
Yeah, it was just. I was on
crazy
like morning radio the next day, and BBC World Service live on air kind of thing. If you looked at on the front page of Dazine, Core 77, Business Insider, it was this story. It was really everywhere for 24 hours. I remember at my internship, people were just kind of scrolling these websites. It was like a trends forecasting company, so they were checking these websites anyway. They were saying, how come our intern's on the front page of all this? Like who is she?
What's going on here?
Who is she? And I remember the Evening Standard did a double page spread on the story, and so they made a picture of me holding Bump, like a full bleed picture, as one half of it. And I was riding the tube, and obviously everyone reads the Evening Standard, and people were they were looking at a picture of me, and then looking
like double
up
taking,
at me,
and
then looking down again. And because it's London, no one said anything. No. So that was a really weird experience. And my surname was one of the answers in the Times crossword that weekend, which I think is really cruel because my surname is not the easiest. Paksteiter.
Yeah.
So people needed to know my surname if they wanted to know the answer of who won this year's surname of the person who won the James Dyson Award this year.
So you were literally in a crossword.
Yeah, I was one of the answers of a crossword in the Times. How cool is that?
I never knew that.
Yeah.
That's so good.
So it was a really weird time. So out of all of this press, other than it being really exciting and like I was like a deer in headlights, food companies started getting in touch.
Yeah.
Coca-Cola, Sainsbury's, Asda, Albert Heijn in the Netherlands, all reaching out and asking to have meetings with me. I was thinking, meetings about what? This is just an idea.
Yeah.
And they were, they took me out for a nice lunch. They were really trying to woo me, and they were saying, well, when can we test this? When can we trial this? I said, what are you talking? Well, I didn't say what we were talking about. I said, yes, I'll put together a proposal. And so I was going to this internship in the day, sneaking out at lunchtimes to have meetings at Coca-Cola head office, because I have to say my internship company was not very supportive of me doing this. They were like, you doing in the internship or not? So I was working this internship in the day, checking out at 5 o'clock as soon as I could, and then going home and like writing proposals in the night, trying to figure out what a project proposal even looks like. Yeah. And then sending them over to some of the companies I was working with. So it was way too early. Oh my God. Like I needed to have figured out making the gel accurate every time. That's how it works. There's a gel inside the label, which we calibrate to have the same level of temperature sensitivity as the specific food. Yep. I had done some testing with gels in theory, as part of my project. I found that they'd last different amounts of time when I made them different strengths, basically. But I hadn't matched them to any foods yet. I just said, in theory, you could match it to different foods. And so there was a whole journey ahead of me before I could even get the chemistry to work, let alone putting it into a actual product and then figuring out how to manufacture at that scale and get that accurate every time. Yeah. So it was way too early for me to be sending project proposals, but I wasn't to know. Really
interesting. You had, the opposite, scenario that most people have when they start a business in that, you submitted something to a competition and it won, and that exposure, you were then getting the demand was coming to you.
Yes, and the product isn't ready. It's not even a thing.
Yeah, I mean it was conceptual at best.
Exactly.
So that's absolutely fascinating. But having said that, how did it make you feel when you were getting this this demand and obviously this very large corporations contacting you? I mean, how are you feeling at that time? I mean, obviously you must have been kind of excited and initially, but then what was going through your mind once things started?
I had no idea what I was doing. So there was a bit of like just fake it till you make it. Yeah. I didn't know what I was doing and I wasn't asking the right questions. So some of these ended up not being good opportunities because, I felt like I was being strung along for a bit, but I wasn't asking. I could have gotten to know quicker, but I was just desperate to make them not go away. And actually when it came to, which product would you actually put this on? Do you have a budget to run this? All of these things which I could have asked at the start. Yeah. It didn't. But I think overall, I've spoken to other Dyson winners about this, but the whole deer in headlights thing, it's a double-edged sword. I think it's on one hand, amazing exposure. There's no way I would have even turned this into a company if this didn't happen. It brought potential customers that I could talk about and then write a grant application about all of this market interest and win grants. That's how we were initially funded. But on the other hand, if all of that happens too soon before your product is ready, I felt myself being pulled in a lot of different directions and actually probably wasting 1 or 2 years, I would say, really, where I could have just been having my head down, getting the product done. Yeah. What if you made the label for this? Have you considered doing this? And let's have a conversation. I just said yes to every single meeting that came my way because I didn't know what else to do. Flying all over the world to speak at conferences, which weren't that useful, but I was just saying yes to everything. I was invited to do a TEDx talk, so that was a cool thing. But other award winners have said exactly the same. It actually stopped the progress of the product, but without it, I wouldn't have even been pursuing it as a company. And I think now we get so much help and support and free advice or people want to connect you with someone useful. But I think that came out of that initial exposure and just being known about. So definitely huge benefits.
Yeah.
But also, it's really tricky to manage all of the stuff that comes your way.
Yeah, those were the other pressures. Did you feel pressure or under some kind of expectation to perform or to deliver at that point in time?
I think it was more the immigrant brain of you don't say no to opportunities. Yeah. So actually, I think that really came out. If I'm being invited to speak at this cool conference in Thailand, they might not ever. Maybe this is the last conference I'll ever be invited to, so I might as well do it. Yeah, it was always like, what if this is the last opportunity? I can understand that. So, I mentor particularly designers trying to push their concepts into businesses forward now, and focus is my number one piece of advice that I give people, and it's really difficult to do in practice. But when I meet them every month, I'm like, what have you done to like get to where you need to go? And I know that's, you were mentoring me for a while, and I think you were trying to do the same thing, but at that time I was still in the
I saw you in that phase,
running around, I don't have time to do this, but this is the core stuff that I should have been doing. And but it's really difficult to get off that treadmill. It felt like a treadmill. I know how you feel. Went through it myself. Okay, so just obviously you had all of this interest, and so at what point did you kind of start to think, well, this is a company, and I guess form a company, and then actually go from just having all of that exposure and to a certain degree expectation, because the expectation that it's a real thing. How did you kind of deal with that transition from that expectation through to actually turning it into a business and actually being a businesswoman or a founder, let's say? So a number of things needed to happen before it was an actual business. So we needed to get the gel development done. That we needed to make sure that was working, and we needed to then to move that into a product, figure out how it was going to be manufactured, and then I knew I needed a different team, because while I have a global vision for what this could be, and I knew that I lacked the experience to get us there. So kind of going through those three things, we set up a partnership with the university to work out of their labs, get expertise from their professors on the chemistry side of things, that was a good call. Actually, our team still works out of our lab team works out of a university still today. We started at University of Chester and then moved everything over to Wrexham University in Wales. That was like the first phase of making that happen. And we found that actually it could be done. It was technically feasible, and the gel could be made at a good price, things like that. In terms of turning that into a product, plus needing extra help, a really key thing that I did was bring in experts who had been there, done that. So I was actually introduced by someone at Marks and Spencer, who was in innovation, introduced me to a guy called Laurie, who's the CTO of a company called It's Fresh. They also make smart packaging. They make these sachets that absorb ethylene from fruits and berries to help reduce food waste. So they were solving food waste, but in a different way, by actually extending shelf life, by removing the ripening hormone. He put us in touch and introduced us. And for a couple of years, Laurie mentored me. And then they kind of sold part of the business and exited. And so Laurie got back in touch and said, can we help you with what you're doing? And I knew that they were going to save me. They being the CEO of It's Fresh as well, Lawrence. they were going to save me so much time just from being there, worked out the pricing strategy. They had the black book, contact book. And so they started consulting with me. And so in terms of turning the idea into an actual product, Laurie, who's now our CTO, he's a chemist by background, but from Isfresh had experience of scaling something from the lab bench to billions of units.
Yeah.
So it was really bringing Laurie, and that really gave that direction and expertise. And then Lawrence really helps with the kind of international sales kind of strategy. And that was the best decision I ever made, bringing in those expertise. So they started consulting, and then I brought them into the management team pretty early on.
Yeah. So, I mean, absolutely critical decision. And there's always that kind of inflection point, right? Where, particularly with, single founders or where you, just like yourself, had a really good concept. You did some initial work, right, to prove, so you're confident enough. But then, especially with something like this, which is really as good as the idea is, for it to work and for it to be beneficial and to achieve its objective, which is addressing food waste, it has to be done at scale, right, for it to be effective.
Absolutely.
And so then you start to come out of that kind of just proof of concept mode or MVP mode to commercial, right?
Yes.
Yeah. And that's obviously you tick those boxes obviously by getting in those the right people with the right backgrounds.
Exactly. And people were really surprised when that change happened, because I mean, you're just CEO by default when you start a company, founder and CEO.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean that I know anything. It's just like your title. I was okay at figuring things out, but it was way too slow than what I needed to do. So people were reaching out to me like, did you burn out? Are you okay? Like, are you leaving Mimica? What's happening? And I said, no, but can you see who I've got now at the helm? Wouldn't you make them CEO? And Mimica's bigger than me. It's not about my ego and yes, that's a nice title, founder and CEO, but for it to have the kind of global impact I want it to have, I really need it to give it the best chance possible. And the way I could see to do that is to get someone who has that experience. Yeah.
In your experience, how do you create a company culture? What in your eyes, what is the company culture?
I think it's a tricky thing to answer. So I think part of it is definitely the values that you set for your company, and then not just making it writing on a wall, actually making your decisions based on your values shows people this is what we're about. So for example, we have health and loved ones first as one of our values. So what that means is if someone has to, I don't know, last minute, a loved one needs picking up from a hospital visit or something like that because something fell through, you don't say, oh, God's sake, you're going to miss that meeting. You just say, of course, go. And you actually have to mean it. Yeah. So that's just exactly. So if that's one of your values, and then another one is making the impossible possible. So so then people know that we're going to kind of go big and dream big, and we make decisions in meeting rooms based on that feeling. So I think kindness and respect is another one. So I think that's how those structures start. But then really kind of your culture is what your team makes it. I can try to set a culture, but it's really how your team behaves. And unfortunately, that also sometimes means if someone joins the team and you realize that they are not a fit for the culture, you need to address that and get them as efficiently and smoothly out of the company. So there's a lot that goes into protecting it, but what it fosters is a really strong work environment where people really want to help each other out, be collaborative, and want to do their best working with us. Yeah. I
mean, obviously you have a team of people, various stages of their career, let's say. What would your advice be to anyone, that's whether that their early stages or mid-career, wanting to get up, the career ladder and progress? What are the things, that you look for, or what are the things that are important to you when you say, that person's doing this right, or, their attitude or their approach? What are the traits that you look for, for someone that you think, they have potential or they're doing the right things?
Yeah, we talk about when we're interviewing candidates, are they a Mimica person? Yeah. And what is a Mimica person? So they have to be just like the right attitude to just want to learn and be a good self-manager. So clearly it's like a self-starter, something like that. They have to really care about making an impact, not just... You can really tell if someone's rehearsed, like, I read about climate change and like da-da-da, and you can just tell if they're being sincere about that or not. So that is a non-negotiable for us. They have to care about our mission. And just willing to, I think willing to learn and a positive attitude. And they can't be rude or kind of inconsiderate in any way, even if they're brilliant and they are clearly like the best candidate on paper and interviewed amazingly. If they seem like a bit of a asshole, it's not going to happen. Yeah. So I think that links back to the culture thing. So I think attitude is, while what your experience and what you know is clearly very important, I think that's almost like just a prerequisite. It's your attitude and how you're going to work with the rest of our team. That's really one of the most important things that we look at. Yeah.
Did you ever come close to quitting? Do you think, this,
all the
I've had
time.
enough?
Not all the time, but heaps of times. Yeah. Heaps of times.
What kept you going?
What kept me going? Just it's the ultimate vision, mission and goal that we're trying to achieve, and no one's done this before. So it's going to be hard. And I think even if things get tricky, it's always still worth pursuing because, gosh, we can make such a big impact. And it's something that feels like it should exist in the world. I think it belongs to the world. And it's ultimately that keeps me going. But I'm also just a very persistent person. So, And often if I'm close to thinking, gosh, this is taking so long, is this even worth it? It's time for a holiday. Yeah. And that always resets you, kind of gets you focused on what needs to happen next. And so I'm a big fan of taking time off.
Yeah, it sounds as though you really understand that importance and the balance and when to break. Yeah, it seems like you got that.
It's critical.
Well understood. Okay, great. So final question is always ask about, particularly for entrepreneurs, aspiring entrepreneurs, or anyone scaling up their business. What would be your one piece of advice for anyone that's looking to scale or to grow their business?
Specifically grow. I would say focus on one vertical. It's really tempting when maybe you've done a few pilots, that kind of thing, to be like, oh, well, we can expand our product for this application and this application. Or maybe we'll have one customer in the UK and then another one in France. And then, someone in, Brazil wants to talk to us. Especially maybe your team is, if it's not the biggest yet, focusing on one vertical. So, for example, we're sticking with beverage companies in the UK with our cap. Yeah. And actually, yes, we will entertain a conversation with, a large beverage company in the US, but we're not going to put that much time or effort into it for the time being, because really it just is way more efficient to only go to conferences in the UK for the time being, that kind of thing, and really pursue that market in a more aggressive way. Otherwise you're just stretched out too thin. Yeah. So that would be my advice.
Very good advice. Well, I'd just like to say thank you for your time. I think that, it's been great to talk to you again. And it's been a real pleasure talking to you and, listening to your story. I think your progression, I mean, I've known you for about probably 8 years out of those 10, quite a lot. And, to see you change and grow and progress into, a successful leader, and, the way that you put the importance on culture, and also obviously, your cause, of fighting food waste. It's very inspirational for me personally. And it's great. And I think that your only good things are going to happen for you. And I'm certainly going to be looking out and with great happiness for you and anticipation for the next 10 years. And I hope that, of course, we can help you to achieve your goals as well. And
you already are.
Well, let's see. So just thanks again. It's been a real pleasure to see you again.
Thanks for having me. It's been great.
Pleasure. High five.
Yeah.
Cheers. All right. That's it.
Clap.
Oh yeah. Sorry.
Do we need to clap at the end? I don't
know. No, I don't think we do.